Welcome back to another episode of Warrior Spirit, where we let your inner warrior out to the light. Today, I have the honor and privilege to be here with Judy Pacheco. Judy is the mother of one of my dear friends and a client, and she is an advocate for mothers who have lost their children. Judy lost her son when he was at a young age, and now she helps other people get through that grief. So, Judy, I appreciate you joining us today, and thank you for your time doing this.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Let's just jump right in. How old was your son when he passed, and how did that happen?
Okay, so he was short 1 month from turning 21. He died May 26, 1990. His birthday was June 26, 1969. So he was a month short from turning 21. And he was on his way home, he and his girlfriend at that time. But by home, I mean our hometown. And this is her story. She said that two of his friends came by and they were highly intoxicated. And my son was always like I am, willing to help, no matter what it was. So he told her that he was headed to sober them up. Well, he never came back. It's my understanding that they went to this bash in Truth or Consequences, which they have every year for close to, well, it was Memorial Day when he passed. And they didn't quite make it there. I guess there were a lot of factors involved. One of them was the fact that he had a truck that had very wide tires. The truck was cut down. There was gravel, and they were intoxicated. That's what the police report said. When he hit gravel, there were three of them, but when he hit gravel with the truck, it spit him out. None of them had the seat belts on. And it broke his neck, is what the report said. And then the truck came back and landed on him. So he died instantly.
So he lost control of the vehicle. Were the other people in the vehicle affected as well?
One of them had like a sprained arm. The other one had lacerations. But it's my understanding that, well, they walked out of there. They went down a 60-foot embankment when they hit the gravel. So they climbed back up, and there was a person that saw him, and he said that the music was blaring really loud, and that they were speeding, And after he passed, there was some lawyers that wanted us to sue the county. However, I told my husband that would be blood money. It's not going to bring him back, So I guess that was a seventh death that within a certain amount of time period. So
how did this affect your family? Because a lot of sudden loss like this, especially of a child, has a super adverse effect on the rest of the family. How did this affect your family?
It affected us in a very strong way. It's like a puzzle. Once you have a piece missing, it's never the same. But it turned our lives upside down, totally upside down. My daughter, as you know, she was only 12. Her frontal lobe was not developed. So in a sense, we lost them both. My husband and I were grieving for both of them because she went off in the deep end, and that's where she needed to be. And I cried every day for 8 years, every single day, until I just realized, he's not coming back. And my husband put all his time and effort into his job. I was working with him at that time. We had established a company, a propane company. And so he put everything in there until he couldn't anymore. And as he probably mentioned to you, he went to Peru so they could open his heart. and not me. I cried every day, and I was seeking, constantly seeking. I told my mother one time, I said, you know what, I think I'm going crazy because I can't function. I said, I think I want to see a psychiatrist. And being raised and born in a small town, there's a lot of isolation and a lot of beliefs, that I look back and I'm like, it's just programming and conditioning. But she said to me, if you go there and then you and Paul get divorced, they're going to say you're crazy. And I thought at the time, well, I'm crazy already. I just felt that way.
Sure.
So I started seeking, and I found a psychiatrist in Taos, New Mexico. And at that time, I was going to college and I was getting my degree in social work. So at that particular period, I was doing interviews. So this psychiatrist and his wife were going through a divorce. And 2 sessions, I was paying him like 180, and it's not the money, it's the principle. But he was very concerned about the wife taking the dog, and he was. It was like a role reversal, And finally, I just told him, I said, "This isn't working for me. I want you to find somebody that does not do conventional therapy. I want alternative therapy." So he did. He found a wonderful man named Vishu McGee, and he started doing biofeedback on me.
Oh, yes.
For, I think it was like for 2 or 3 years, because I was so broken from my childhood, so broken. And he got me on to the biofeedback, and then it just seemed as though people appeared. I don't know if you're familiar with Gary Zukov, but we attended his conferences. And Doreen Virtue, I don't know if you remember her, Abraham Hicks, and today it's Joe Dispenza. But anyway, it just seemed like at that time when I needed somebody or we needed somebody, God would put them there for us.
Yeah, when we need the path lit, the light comes, for sure.
Exactly.
Now, so you had not only childhood trauma to deal with, then the loss of your son, essentially the loss of your husband and your daughter all at the same time. What about the therapy helped piece all that back together?
Well, let me go back to my childhood. I always
Sure.
felt I was born an awakened child, okay?
Okay.
And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I thought that I was crazy.
Yeah.
My father would find me kneeling down praying, and he'd say, "Why are you praying?" And I said, "So the craziness goes away." So I could feel everything, and I knew a lot of things, but I couldn't explain them, And I'm sorry, what was the question you asked?
No, let's explore that. So walk me through that process of stepping into that awakening, and kind of how that process through your life.
Well, it was very difficult, I think from the time I was born, because I always felt as though my mom didn't want me. I can't explain it, but I came 13 months after my older sister. And I think my mom just couldn't handle that, And then I was the child that spoke up, got the beatings because I spoke up, and always questioned, or I was always judged, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? So I always grew up like I had no value, I had no worth, and I felt like something was wrong with me because I didn't fit anywhere. I didn't fit in the family. I didn't fit around the relatives, my environment, the school. So it was very hard. And I think for me, that was a preparation for my son's death, because my life was always difficult. I'm sure there's people that have it a lot worse than me, but it was very hard for me. And looking back at my life, I realized that that was a preparation for losing my son, because that was the hardest bump on the road for me, dealing with that, because it it makes you crazy until you find yourself, if you ever do, because a lot of people don't.
Well, I know that people who are intuitive or empathic, especially back in the day when you were growing up, terms like that weren't used or accepted or understood. So you had to fight through all of that essentially on your own, correct? I mean,
Correct. I actually had to fight all my life, and I didn't understand it. I used to think, even at one point, after our son passed away, I think I became a victim, because it's like, how much is enough? I've had it, why? I just kept asking. But I get it now. I get it now, because through my awakening, I have made a difference, in helping many mothers and children that have lost. Because let's face it, what do they teach us in society? If you're not pretty, if you're not sexy, if you don't have money, if you don't have status, if you don't have the big house, then that's when you're worth something. But if you don't have that, you're not worth anything. But do they teach you how to grieve? Even the churches? Hell no, they don't. When one of the times before, let me go back. One of the times before I went to see the psychiatrist, I went to see a priest because I was a mess.
mhm.
When I called him, he seemed very open. When I got there, because I'm a feeler, I felt like he was disturbed about something. I don't know what, but he said to me, "What's your problem? Have a seat. What's your problem?" And I told him, I said, "I don't want to live. I'm having a hard time." You know what he asked me? "Do you believe in God?" I said, "I absolutely do." And he's like, "Well, get over it." I
Wow.
did not want to hear that. And excuse my French, can I say the
Yeah,
four-letter word here?
absolutely.
So I said to him, I said, "What the fuck am I doing here? You're not married, you don't have kids, you haven't lost a child." And I slammed the door and told him, "F you." And I walked out. And that's after that, I met the psychiatrist who put me in touch with Vishu, who did the biofeedback. And it's been never ending. Anytime that I find anything on self-improvement, I
Mhm.
try and take it in so that I can share it, apply it to my life, yes, but also share it. And some people are open and some aren't, and some people are for us and they're not, and that's okay. But I learned at a very young age that I was all I had. We're really alone. I don't care if you're a unit, I don't care if you're a family, but we're really alone. And
Mhm.
that's why when people tell me, because I've been married 53 years, and people tell me, "Well, you don't know what it's like to be lonely," it makes you crazy. I've
Mhm.
always been lonely from the time I was born, you know. So for me, it's something that I've just accepted, that I'm all I really have to count on. I mean, it's nice to have the husband and, the daughter and all of this.
But
But
it's
I meant,
still, yeah, it still comes down to your own work and finding value in yourself instead of those
exactly.
external forces. At the time of your son's loss, you said you were going to school to become a counselor. Did you get through that process
I
and
did. I did. I got my degree. And I actually just need one more semester. I got into the advanced standing program
Mhm.
at New Mexico State. And I did 2 semesters and I did really good. But then my father-in-law got sick and Allegra had my granddaughter, you know. Looking back, that was the right thing to do. People would tell me, "No, you can't quit school. No, you can't. But in my heart, I felt that's where I needed to be. So I didn't complete the last semester of because I was going into counseling. Um, but just reading a lot of stuff, and that's where my focus is, and healing,
Mhm.
just healing. You
So
know.
what are you doing today to serve other grieving mothers?
Well, let me give you an example. There's a gal from back home. Her son just collapsed, left 3 kids. I'm going to give her a little bit of time, which is what I do, because at the beginning, you don't even know whether you're alive or you're dead.
Mhm.
And what I do is I reach out to them and I just kind of hold their hand and tell them, the first thing I tell them is, "I wish I had a magic wand to take your pain away. but I can't do that. All I can do is share my story. And like I tell them, a lot of times I'll give them information to read or to do. And I say to them, it might not resonate with you because I'm not you, but this is what has helped me, or when they're going through a hard time. Some of them have gotten divorced. Some took to alcoholism. I had one mother that died. And just trying to teach them that you'll be okay, no matter what, no matter what your path has been.
So you're holding safe space for them.
Exactly.
And how are they finding you? Or are you doing it professionally, or do you work through an outreach program?
Not professionally. I do it on my own, on a volunteer basis. And I love it. It's easy for me, because I see the changes in them. Let me give you an example. I have a mother that her son died at 14. And she's got so much trauma in her life with the family. The dynamics are bad. I finally got her to move away because she's got a daughter that has a lot of problems, and she's raising the granddaughter who has major health issues. And I just told her, I said, you need to move away. That's the only way you're going to heal. And now she thanks me. Because I told her, I understand being a mother, you care for them, you love them, but they're not your lessons. It's theirs. It's their lessons and it's their choices. It's not yours. So just pray and give it to God. That's what I tell them.
I think it's hard for mothers to embody that and understand that. There's a connection that mothers naturally have for their children, and to lose them at any age, it makes it tough. But to the ones that are left behind, to still be a mother for them, that's also the hard part.
Yeah, that was hard for me. My husband put all his time into the business. I'd sleep a lot. I didn't have the energy. And I got like a mini stroke after he died. I've recovered from that, but my mind isn't the way that it was, before that. I was always very sharp, got double promoted, 3rd grade into 5th grade. So I knew I was very intelligent, but I lost a lot of that, and I lost a lot of hope. I mean, you just literally go crazy. And the way I looked at myself when my son died is like, I was birthed from an unknown womb into a new world, having to deal with everything, knowing that everything that I knew wasn't going to help me. I had to be creative, and I had to find ways to get out of that deep hole. And I might say that, as the lesson was presented, new teachers would come. I did a lot of the ayahuasca ceremonies, and it is there that I did a lot of my healing. We went to do a ceremony up in Stanford University in the psychology department with the vibrations, the healing and everything. And it was there that I finally let go. It was 8 years. And I stopped crying, and the cat he gave me died. There was nothing wrong with him. He just died. So that's when I started realizing I can't be living like this. It doesn't feel good, But I credit the ayahuasca ceremony a lot for it, simply because, I was under the influence, of the medicine. And my son would come to me, and my grandmother would come to me, and my son would say, you have to let me go, Mom. I can't do what I need to do because you're hanging on too tight. The other thing is, he was always dressed in black. That was always his color. Well, when I see him, he's like an angel, all dressed in white,
Yeah.
So I got to do a lot of the healing through that. We can't do them anymore. They're illegal.
I'm familiar with those ceremonies, so I understand, some of the medicine is pretty potent. So,
Yeah.
but it's getting in touch with that inner portion, the ugliness that we want to bury instead of deal with, and we have to get that out of us in order for us to actually heal that part.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what would you say? Because you're a very strong, self-reliant individual. Not everybody has that fortitude that you do. So what would you say to the people who need more help than you did? How would you advise them? What would you say to those folks?
I would first say to live for the moment or the second, the minute, the hour to complete your day, to have that gratitude. And that's how I live, because I can't make it any other way. I mean, yes, you have plans, you have appointments, you have all of this stuff, but on a daily basis, I try and live that way, and I'm so grateful when I'm done for the day. And yeah, we get challenged a lot of times, but instead of getting angry anymore, I'm just kind of ha ha ha,
Finding solace through the humor.
And the other thing that I would tell the mothers is this pain will not be as severe. It'll start going away as the years go by. But I don't know. I had a mother tell me one time, I was supporting her like for 2 years. And one year, I guess she had a bad day. And she says, well, I'm glad you're having a good day and you're happy. And I said, well, I wish that for you too. And she said, never, never. That's the one that took to drinking and it took her life.
Mm.
And going back to what you asked me, I just remembered people would refer me. I don't know why, even a nurse, I've done work with people from California, people from Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico, that type of thing. But Jesse Cruz, don't you?
Yes.
Well, I'm doing something with him, but that's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
And the reason I am is because I want to not do that so much anymore on a one-to-one. I want to be able for them to see it and use it and apply it.
Yeah, I think, getting through each moment and each day, I think you said something very interesting when you had the visions of your son, or when your son would come to you. He requested of you to let him go. And I think that, even in our loss, I was once told that, the funeral isn't hard for the person who passed. It's hard for those who are living and remember that person, right? And the
Right.
grieving process is now about us instead of them. And letting them go, not completely and entirely, but
Mhm.
enough so that they can transition to do what they need to do on that other side.
Right.
I think that's an important part of the grieving process. My wife has a memorial tree every Christmas for
Oh,
those who
nice.
have passed, and every year she hangs the ornaments, and but I see her honor her past loved ones without clinging to their passing,
Mhm.
and she clung to her father and her mother passing for many, many years, and all it did was continue her own trauma from their loss.
Mhm.
Her father passed from West Nile, so it wasn't a
Oh, I'm
natural,
sorry.
it
Yeah.
wasn't a natural process, right? So she hung on to that for way too long. And as she started to understand what you just said, that it's okay to let them go, but you don't have to
Mhm.
forget them and release them totally. And there's a difference in that.
Yeah, I think there is. And from my experience and, just advocating for mothers when they share the story, I think the deeper the love and that connection, the deeper the grief.
Mhm.
But there comes a time where you have to flip it. You can't live that way. I have a sister that tells me all the time, you're never going to get out of your grief because you're always with that heavy energy. And I said, what you don't understand is that's my gift. I have flipped it. I said, my life's been hell and back. And yet there's a lot to be grateful for, okay? But I'm just grateful that I made it. And I told her, and I swore that if my daughter would get well, and I swore that if my family would get well, I would continue. I remember at one point, Allegra would tell me, well, why are you helping them? You don't even know them. They don't even care. They need the help because you know what? When it happened to me, I didn't have any help. I had to go seek it. I had to go do it. Because even my family, I remember being at the dinner table for Thanksgiving, and what came out of my dad's mouth, I just wanted to get up and hit him with something. But he said, well, you know what? You shouldn't be crying. He said, it's been 6 months. He says, why don't you get over it? And see, the priest had already told me that. So that was a trigger for me. And I didn't go back for many years thereafter because I thought, well, he's saying that I'm making everybody uncomfortable, which is the norm for him. So I'm not going to be present. And then after a while, they started using that as ammunition. And it's like I told him, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me. And I'm not doing this right now.
Well, that's the problem, that like grief is felt and handled differently by every individual. And
Right.
it's not a universal blanket of, okay, 4 months have passed and now you shouldn't be grieving anymore, or 4 years, or in your case 8 years. That process, that internal clock, is individualized. And too many counselors, too many people, too many friends, too many family, they tried to just say, like you heard too many times, well, get over it. Well, that's not my process. That's not how I'm dealing with it. I can handle it and I can tend to it, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm going to get over it.
You never do. I don't know if you've seen my Facebook, but I put things up there. Yes, I miss him, but the pain isn't the way it was. And I truly believe my son came into the world to spread love. I mean, he'd give you the shirt off his back. You needed something, I'm here. He never hung on to any material. He just loved. And I think that's what he taught me. And the one thing he would always tell me is, Mom, when is it going to be time for you, Mom? Another thing he would say was, don't live in the past. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not here. Live the day as if it was your last. And then he'd say, and fuck the neighbors. In other words, don't preoccupy yourself with what people think.
Yeah.
And I think I've always kind of been that way because I always had to fight for myself. At one point I used to protect my brother and my sister, and I just stopped doing that because that's theirs.
Well, you're a beautiful soul in this world, and you bring light now through your own darkness. And, part of the reason that I started this podcast was because I started to hear more and more stories, and none of them had a platform to just express it. And so I want this to be a place where the mess can become the message, so that it can become a survival guide for somebody else. And I think you embody that tremendously. So I'm very honored that you took time out of your day to share your story. As we kind of come to a close, is there one specific point you'd like to make to those who are in the process of the grieving? And at the end, if there's a way for them to be able to reach out to you if they need that type of help, are they able to do that as well?
Sure. The one thing I would recommend is to treasure themselves, to be gentle with themselves. It's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. And as I said earlier, the deeper the love, the longer the time to heal. And grief is not just about the actual separation. I found out it was about everything about my life and all the dirty garbage up until that point. And that's what I try and do with mothers. I'm like, at the same time, yeah, we're talking about their child, but at the same time, I'm wanting to know what their childhood was like. And usually if you've had a really, really rough childhood, it makes it so much harder, so much harder. And just to be gentle with themselves, you can learn to have joy. You can learn to laugh. You can learn to still be creative. You can still learn to be you.
I think that's one of the harder parts for people grieving. Somehow, by moving on and finding joy and laughter again, they almost feel like it's somehow betraying the person that they lost. Like they're somehow psychologically supposed to stay in this loop of grief forever. And so then it gets replaced with guilt because now they're finding joy and some laughter again. Have you found that to be kind of
It is, again, I was raised with a lot of guilt, shame, obligation, manipulation, and I recognized it immediately, but at the same time, I kind of look at myself like, you can do it. You can get out of this, no matter what it is. It's just the mindset. And besides, like my son used to say, because I'd always tell him, I wish you lived forever, and he'd say, well, Mom, I'm not yours. I belong to God, and I'm not going to be here forever. So that's the thing, we're going to die sooner or later. And don't get me wrong, I'm not taking this like if it doesn't mean anything, the guilt and losing my son. I miss him dearly. However, he taught me how to be me indirectly, through his love, through his understanding. He wasn't perfect. He had like 3 DWIs. He was driving and he was drinking at the time that he passed away. But he was so loving. And I truly believe that he came here to maybe save our marriage also.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful thing. And the more that I hear about your son, the more I feel that he was a spark for a light that you're supposed to shine. And
let me share a little story with you. I have a neighbor that his father shot himself. We were living back home in our hometown at that time. And my son was friends with the neighbor. And when my son died, the neighbor came and told me, he says, you know what? I'm going to miss him. He said, I never knew what love was. My mom was always beating on us. My dad was always drunk. But he taught me what love was. He said, I didn't know. And that made me very happy. Even for the services, there were so many people there, and they had really great things to say about him. But I feel that we go through life in deep sorrow a lot of times. But through all of that, at any time that something awful happens, there's always a miracle. There's always a blessing. And that's what I've done with my life. I have flipped it. I have flipped my life because my life was not easy.
I think the hard part, I believe what you say is true, and my life is a testament to that exact phrase. The hard part is that when we're in the middle of that, we're not saying, hey, God, thanks for the crap that you're raining down on me, right? And sometimes it takes moments, sometimes it takes years, sometimes it takes decades later,
right?
And then you can look back and say, oh, that helped me get here. We're not, I always, because I study psychology and have my background in that, there was a psychologist joke that at the end of the joke basically says, if you're dealing with a lot of crap, there must be a pony in there somewhere. So my goal now is to help people find their pony, right? Because we're all dealing with some form of mess and crap. And I think it's important to, you know, find that pony so that it doesn't stay crap forever, right?
Yeah, I want to share something. I met a lady, she's a healer and my coach, and she's been very, very powerful as far as my mind, changing my mindsets.
Mhm.
But she told me one time, because I was going through periods, my mom never told me she loved me, you know. She took care of my needs, yes, but never told me she loved me, was never proud. And I was sharing this with my coach, and she's like, you have everything you need, honey. Why would you want your mother's love? That would be icing on the cake. And I didn't understand it. I wanted to get up and hit her above the head. But I understand it now. You know, we come into this world with everything that we need. It's just up to us to reach out and tap into that.
Yeah, it's funny because as I coach people, that's something that I try to get them to tap into as well. And we do have what we need. We just don't always know where to find it within us. So it's our job as coaches to help them see that and bring it out. And I think that once you understand that, it makes you a much happier, better person, because you're not looking for that outside validation anymore, right?
No,
And life becomes easier when you're not living for the critics, right?
that's right. And I would tell mothers, are you a victim or are you a victor? It's up to you. Right now, you're a victim, and I understand that. But I hope that even 5-10 years from now, you're not in the same place, because it's not good for you. You came here for a purpose, I tell him, and you will find that purpose. I don't know it, because I didn't even know what mine was going to be.
Well, you're a definite embodiment of a true warrior spirit, and I feel very honored for your time today and very blessed that you shared your story. And I'm extremely happy that you're in my world, that I know you. And
Well, thank you.
glad to get this message out there so others can know you as well. We'll drop a link, if you have one, to how they can get in touch with you. But otherwise, they can just friend you on Facebook or drop you a message and reach out. But I appreciate your time today, and may you guys
Well, thank you.
have a blessed rest of the day.
I'm honored you chose me.
Well,
And
you chose us by being a part of it.
well, thank you. I appreciate your time. Give my love to Elsa.
I will. Thank you.
Take
Judy,
care. Have a beautiful day.
I know.
Bye-bye.